Hi, I'm Mark from American in Russia. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about Russian barbecue or Russian picnic, which I have to say, some of these Russian picnics I've gone on have been some of the most pleasant memories of my entire life. It isn't just the food or the company or even the scenery. It's a blend of all of these things which creates a rather rare synergy and great memories. One of the points that always impressed me with the average Russian is their ability to uh, separate work from pleasure and always leave room for the pleasure part of it, for the pleasure aspect, free time. Russians even have a kind of a saying. It would translate in English to something like, work is not a wolf, it will not run into the forest, which basically means when you leave work, it'll still be there in the morning. So leave work, leave it behind you, and let's go have a good time. Russia, then and now. I had the good luck and the pleasure, not long after my arrival in Russia, to start doing some private tutoring for a Russian family, primarily the husband and the wife, because at that point in time, well, they were planning on immigrating to Canada actually, and they in fact did immigrate to Canada. At that point in time, you didn't just pass an international language exam. You were actually examined by the person at the embassy during your interview. I mean, they would ask you a lot of questions and test your language. So they wanted me to work with them in order to prepare them for this interview. But the longer I worked with this couple, the more friendly we became with each other, the better we got to know each other, and the more I liked them. These were really great, down-to-earth people. My wife got to know them and got to meet them, and we started to do things together. My wife and I, and Vladimir and Yelena. Well, Vladimir and Yelena were really down-to-earth people, and we really enjoyed doing things with them. I'll have some of the things we did with them as the subject of some of my other episodes down the road, but today I'm going to talk about the first time we went on a Russian picnic with them. First, we had the experience of going to a certain special outdoor market with them because we needed to pick up some food for this picnic. So we picked up lamb. We picked up these very, very special spices and some vegetables and onions and carrots and some other things, because what we were going to do that day is we're going to cook a very special meal outdoors called Uzbek plov. Now, this would be translated in English, we would call it like rice pilaf. But let me tell you something. What we call rice pilaf in the West and what we make can't even be compared to the original. It's worlds apart. Now, we drove out of the city into the country, turned onto a road, and headed into the forest. Now, this is so strange to me as a Westerner, because it's like in the West you would never just do that, because all the property belongs to somebody and you needed permission. You wouldn't just pull off on their property, go out in their forest and have a picnic. But here, at least at that point in time, land ownership laws were still being devised, still being worked on, and people looked at most of the land outside the city, the open land, looked at it as like either everybody's land or nobody's land. So we just drove through a field, through on a road, not through the field itself, but on an access road, went into the forest, and we went to a birch grove. And that's where we decided to have our picnic. And what's so cool is you want to start a fire, break some dead branches off of trees, low branches, or pick up dead wood off the ground. Start the fire. Nobody's going to come out trying to chase you off the land with a shotgun like you might expect in the West, or like I would expect in the West. It's pretty cool. And something I want to mention too, I say a birch grove. A birch grove has a different meaning here in Russia than it does in the West. At least I grew up in New England. Birch grove would be a group of birch trees, usually growing very close together and, you know, kind of at different angles. Here, the birch trees are they're large in diameter. There's many of them, but they're fairly spaced apart, and there's not a bunch of undergrowth in the way, shrubs and bushes that you have to fight your way through. It's like nice green grass in between them. It's like a beautiful park. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why a birch, I think, holds a close place in Russian people's hearts. And a birch tree, in Russian you'll call it berioza. That's birch, and it's very special in Russia. Well, at that point in time, I lived in the South Ural region of Russia, which is like kind of a border between Asia and Europe. One of the qualities I remember, especially going outside the city, is I'm going to call it the big sky, because colors are a little different in different countries. The sky in Russia on a nice day was beautifully blue, but it was a paler blue, a lighter blue than what I'm used to. And because there was very little in the way, we're in big fields, there was the sky was just huge, absolutely huge. Vegetation, it was green, but it was a little paler green than what I was used to. As a matter of fact, when I would leave Russia and come back to the United States to visit, one of the first two things that I would notice when I got there is how blue the sky was and how green the vegetation was. Very different. Well, back to my picnic. The first order of business when we got there was to kind of clear a place for the fire. So we cleared a place for the fire. Vladimir and I looked for wood. My wife and Yelena were out looking for wood. We gather all the wood. Now, usually, I'm not saying there's some rule, but very often, actually very much like it was when I grew up in the States, it was the man's job to get the fire going. And typically speaking, it's a man's job to cook the meal outdoors. That's how it always was when I grew up also. We got the fire going. The pluff that we're making, there's a special big pot to make it in. It's large. It's I don't know, quite deep. You know, it's big in diameter, and it's conical bottom, kind of a bullet-shaped bottom. And this whole thing had 3 steel legs that came out and kept it up over the coals. So we got the fire going, let it go down to a bed of coals, and we set up our big pot for the plov. Now, my friend Vladimir had learned how to cook plov from a friend of his from Uzbekistan. In Uzbekistan, when you make plov, it's only the men who make it. So we don't have such a rule here. You won't be able to duplicate this recipe from my description of what we're doing, but I'm going to just loosely describe the sequence. First, at the bottom of this big conical pot, we put the lard, the fat. The fat came from like the base of a lamb's tail. Now, if you don't happen to have a lamb, or let's say the lamb is missing a tail, somebody else cooked plov, you could use any oil. When I make it at home, I usually use like olive oil, but this is what was used, and that's how my friend Vladimir was taught. So first went in the lamb's, not the lamb's tail, but the fat formed at the base of that lamb's tail. Then we threw in the lamb, which had been cut up, not the same lamb that the tail came from, but lamb. It was cut up into cubes about 3 centimeters, a little over an inch square. We put those into the big pot, and you have like a round spatula thing with holes in it that you start mixing it up with, moving it around. Once that was all browned, you know, at the bottom of the pan, we added onions, and there was a lot of onions. We added the onions, put them in along with the meat. Some people take the meat out and then do the onions. We just did them together until they were fully sauteed. At that point, it's kind of a layering process. At that point, we put a bunch of carrots. The carrots were cut into like sticks, but thin, small, like matchstick size, maybe a little bit bigger, and a lot of them. So there was a layer of those put down. Then the rice that we were using, and there's a lot of rice, you would rinse first in water to get the starch, most of the starch out. You'd rinse it, drain the starch, Now you put the rice in there uncooked, put a layer of the rice on top of the matchstick style carrots, then another layer of matchstick style carrots, then another layer of rice. Oh yeah, I forgot, with the meat, excuse me, yeah. With the meat there were many different spices that went on top of the meat. There were these red berries, in English I think they're called barberries. I've never really been familiar with them before. There's salt, there's pepper, there's cumin, there's other spices. Matter of fact, here online you can buy Uzbek plov spices already all mixed together, and you buy a bag and you use it. That's what I do when I make it at home. Okay, after the layering, we poured water over it, and we filled the water so it was up about 3 centimeters above the level of rice. Now I don't remember whether we covered that pot or left it uncovered. I don't remember, but all I did remember very much so is once you did that layering, you never stir it. Never stir it. You don't touch it again. You go by layer, you put your water, and then you just let it cook. Well, okay, so the plov is now cooking. Now we want some potatoes with it. So we had baked potatoes, and Vladimir had a conical shaped thing of sheet metal that down on these same hot coals over to the side a little bit. We cleared a little space, put the potatoes like on the earth, and then put the conical shaped metal on top of it. Then we shoveled hot coals all over this conical shaped piece of metal, so it formed like a little oven. We let the potatoes cook. During this prep time, we were drinking beer and telling stories, and the day was beautiful. It was an autumn day. It was a little bit crisp, but it was clear. It was a perfect day for a picnic. Vladimir, like many other Russian men, he was very organized with his outdoor life. He had everything that you would need in milk crates, and when they thought about what they wanted to do that day, they would load certain milk crates into the car, had like a station wagon, head out and do it, and everything was in there, always. And there was some really cool stuff in there that I wouldn't have thought about. But I'll tell you something. I think if I had said, Vladimir, today let's go somewhere and fish, play frisbees, look at the stars and the planets through telescopes, and play darts, I'm sure that he had milk crates already packed with those very items in there. That's how organized he was. It was just amazing to me. I'm not that organized, and I don't think that far ahead. But Vladimir did, and he's not unlike a lot of Russian men. Okay, let's leave the plov to cook and the potatoes to cook, and I'm going to take you on a small Russian barbecue tour. Come on. This is a Russian barbecue. You might look at it and say, well, it looks rather simple. Where's the grill? How come it's so long? I mean, how come it's long? It's not round. A grill's supposed to be round. In Russia, the name of this grill it's called a mangal. The favorite food over here for barbecue is called shashlik. Shashlik is also from Uzbekistan. I think it's a very clever design, and it has a lot of very elegant solutions to problems. So this is really just made for making shashlik, or like, I'm going to say shish kebab, even though they're not the same thing, but they are skewered on. This is a Russian skewer. I don't know if you can see it from there, but it's flat. It's got a point on the end to pierce the meat. Some skewers have like an eye here so you can hang them later. Mine happen to have wooden handles. And something really important and critical is this metal here where it's twisted, the twist to the metal. The reason being, and this is really cool, not in Uzbekistan of course, but here in Russia, the meat that's used is usually pork, and it's usually from the pig's neck. In Russian, we would call it shaya, the neck. By the way, I said this is a mangal. What we're calling in English skewers are called shampor. Every family, I think, has their own recipe of how to make shashlik, what to marinade. The big thing is the marinade that you do for hours ahead of time, maybe even overnight. Maybe because I'm not Russian, no one will ever share a good recipe with me. When I make shashlik, it's terrible. I make terrible shashlik. My wife makes excellent shashlik. So in my family, when it comes to barbecue and shashlik, it's not the man of the house. It's the woman of the house who does it because she does such a good job. So in hers, she has, I'm not sure, it's a secret maybe, what it's marinated in. But she marinates the meat usually overnight with onions and everything. And some people on this shampur or skewer will put like meat, onion, meat, onion. My wife just meat, meat, meat. Yeah, meat lover. And we usually put the meat like in this section from here to here. That's where the meat will go. And let me show you how cool this is designed. I meant to bring out a piece of tape or something you could get a better visual look, but you'll get the idea. So there are these little V notches cut into here. Your meat is there. You have a nice bed of coals going. To turn and hold your meat in any rotation you want, you just turn this a little bit, and because of these little, this twist at the end, it holds whatever position you put it in. Twist a little bit more, so you get a nice, evenly cooked. So, I mean, think about it in the States, we don't have this twist. And we also have a grill. So we're like just laying it on the grill and turning it. And it's on the grill, so it can tend to stick to the grill a little bit. This way here, all those problems are solved. So shashlik, though, is wonderful when it's done. I love my wife's. She loves it, of course. Our daughters love it. We cook shashlik, not a lot, maybe 4 times each summer out here on our little patio in the backyard. Now the rest of the time, just so I don't seem too unmanly because my wife takes care of cooking the shashlik, I barbecue, and I barbecue a lot. I barbecue probably at least 3-4 times every week. Okay, back to our plov and our potatoes, which are cooking. At this point, you can mix it. Although many people just put a big spoon in, scoop from the bottom so they get meat, everything in a layer, rice, and everything, and put it on the plate. Well, that's what they did with me. And I've got to tell you something. This was 22 years ago or something. And this is one of the few times that I remember that I have very, very accurate taste memory. And I think that was probably the best food I'd ever had. And I don't just mean outdoors, I mean period. It was delicious. I can't even describe how it tasted to you. I wish I could. I wish I had like taste-o-vision on this camera, with AI maybe soon. But I can't put my finger on any one thing that it was which gave it its taste. It was kind of a fusion of everything. But it was so delicious. I had several helpings, and I actually brought some home too. Our friends and their children finally did immigrate to Canada. This was almost 20 years ago now. And I'm very happy for them. They're happy there. They started up a business. They're leading a very good life. But I'd be a liar if I said that I didn't miss them. I miss them a lot, and I think of them a lot. And I'm very thankful for the great memories of the different times that we had together. And I'm very happy that I came to Russia, because if I hadn't come to Russia, I never would have met Vladimir and Yelena. And they provided me with good lifelong memories, and I'm really happy about that. Well, thanks again for listening till the end of my video. I now make plov at home. I have we call a special pot. It's called a Dutch oven. It does a really good job. The plov comes out wonderful. I've learned how to make it. And in my family, I'm the one who makes the plov. But the thing that's missing with my plov is the good times I had with my friends who moved to Canada. Well, thank you very much. Until next time, пока.